or let me just introduce the three speakers to keep you on the line here. We have Mr. Alexander Clark, you can call him Alex. He's a senior person from Behavioral Insights team, BIT. He's there. He's looking great today. His organization, his company, I think he's headquartered in London, but he's based in Singapore, by the way. They have done quite a lot of experiments to help the British governments in their policies, right? He can quickly talk about it later when he starts his talk. And then we have the second speaker, Professor Sharon Rundle-Thiel. She's a professor of social marketing from University of Griffith. And if you have known or not quite clear about what is social marketing, it's basically marketing, the same kind of marketing, but it's applied to non-profit sort of activities in order to change public behavior as well, like encouraging people to reduce smoking, to have a healthier lifestyle, etc. And the third speaker will be Mr. Ko Seng-chun. He's the founder of Dignity Kitchen and Project Dignity and a number of different projects under the Dignity Kitchen flagship. So we have these three speakers and we're going to let them speak, but let me go through a number of slides first so we could kind of like warm this up before we let the great speakers take over and share their great insights about what they do. Let me show the slides. Yep, so we're going to show the slides now. I'll be very brief with these things, you know, just to put us into a common sort of understanding. So basically there are four basic types of behavioral change experiments, right? The first is what we call the carrots. Carrots means you provide reward to the people, to the public, so that they change their behavior to a desired form of behavior. For example, if you want people to adopt a green car or solar panel, those things, you give subsidy, you give vouchers, those things. So that's carrot, right? So they are incentivized to adopt this new behavior. Some people use stick. They call it carrot and stick. So this is the stick, right? Stick is a slightly different approach to changing people's behavior by means of rules and regulations. For example, governments or organizations create rules that bans weapon possession, that make public education mandatory. So that will change families to really send their kids to school. So they change the parents' behavior and change people's behavior not to adopt or own guns and things like that. And the third is sermon. A sermon is actually someone talking or preaching. So it's a form of information campaign that people use in order to change the behavior of the public. For example, you want to reduce people from consuming alcohol, or you want to encourage people to be more hygienic washing hands during the pandemic. So this is a form of behavioral experiments called sermon. The last but not least, which is very popular and used a lot, is called nudge or nudging. So what it is actually a form of reminder or reminding people about a certain social norm so that people will follow that norms. I'm going to go through it in a moment, but the example that I put here is a staircase in which they provide some information that nudge you so that you will really use these stairs instead of using the lift next to it or escalator next to it. And they tell you that if you climb by here, you know, what is the benefits for your health, right? And if you've been to Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam, in Netherlands, they have a urinals for men in which they have one tiny thing that looks like a fly stick onto the men's urinal. And there's a certain reason for that. They want men to aim when they are, you know, in the toilet, because there's a lot of instances of the urines going everywhere onto the floor, and this causes a lot of extra work and water, etc., etc. So nudging. And how can you apply this different types of experiments? Some people will do it in the laboratory. Laboratory means it's a very, very controlled environment. So yeah, you can think about like, rocket scientists or biology scientists developing vaccines, or physics trying to develop new airplanes. They need a very controlled environment. So in many of these types of behavioral change experiments, people use laboratory. For example, they invite you and they randomly assign you into different roles or different cubicles in the computer lab and ask you to play a game. Let's say sharing a money to a stranger that you don't know in that room, right? And they will calculate to understand whether humans are selfish or pro-social, and how you induce a change in people's attitude about sharing with other people. The one below that is the one that I love so much. They did an experiment on monkeys. So they put two monkeys who can see one another but separated by a plastic wall, and then they give food to both of them. First they give the same food, and then later they give a better food for the other one. Like they give grapes, not only just banana, they give grapes and other delicious food, and they will try to see the reactions of the other monkeys. And they found interesting results. Actually, they wanted to show a study about fairness and jealousy. So the other one was treated better, and the other one will feel very unhappy about the other monkeys being treated so well. The other example is what's called field experiment. I don't know whether you have been to hotels or traveling, if you stay in hotels, and then in your door or in your bed, they put a message asking to reuse your towel. Like if you don't use your towel, if you want to reuse your towel, then put it in a certain place. If you don't want to reuse it, put it on the floor or on the bathtub. So they actually try with different messages to see how the members of the public will react to this. So their hope is actually to encourage more people to reuse towel more, right? Because it will save water, and it's also more profitable for the hotels, and they will look more environmentally friendly, and there will be more consumers interested to come to the hotel. So there are many organizations that are doing field experiments. What's different between this field versus laboratories? This field experiment is done in the real world, in the real life, involving real people. So in terms of validity, people will say, well, the field experiment is more valid. The other type is online, because we live in an online world right now. So a lot of the experiment has gone online. So I'll show you here one of the most recent study that tries to understand if you put the word government is giving funding to a particular nonprofit organization, will members of the public increase, reduce, or stay the same in terms of their donation to the nonprofit? So they use the same nonprofit, the control for everything, except the information at the lower part of the white space down there. So look at the one on the most right. There's information about this nonprofit receive funding from the government, and they want to know which one works better. So you could test this, for example, to understand about towel reuse, and they found that with different messages, you can get different results of towel reuse. For example, the one at the bottom, in which you say 75% of the guests who stayed in this room reuse towels, you're going to get a 49% increase of the towel reuse. This is according to one published study. You can also see it like how Barack Obama won his online campaign. So they did change with different types of buttons, they have control versus treatment. And they found out that if you have these images, the one on the right, in which he was posing with his family, and there's a button there called learn more, etc., that will generate a lot more donations. And quickly, which is the things that we're interested in, can we use behavioral experiments for social enterprise, for social innovation? For example, if you want to help social enterprises that are employing elderly, disabled, those two pictures, how do you help? How do you apply this, right? Or if you are a social enterprise selling plant-based meat, like this Omniport, for example, how do you encourage people to change the behavior to start consuming these things? So I will not go into further, but I would now introduce the speakers for that to give them more time to talk more about what they have done in terms of behavioral experiments. So let's give a big applause to Mr. Alexander Clark from Behavioral Insights team. He's based in Singapore. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'm hoping everyone can hear me. Yep, some nods. Thanks, guys. And shortly, you should be able to see my slides as well. Is that coming up? Yep, thumbs up. Thanks, Sharon. So thank you again to Dr. Chandra there for giving a great introduction. And I want to pick up on, and I think the next 10 minutes I'll spend sort of talking about one sort of really emphasizing a point he has in fact already made, which is that a lot of us are in the business of behavior change. Even though we may not think of it like that, that is a lot of what we're doing, and that I think is very true of lots of NGOs and lots of social enterprises. And so I do think it is important, if you are in the business of behavior change, to learn about and see what the behavioral science can tell you about how to be as effective in that behavior change as possible. So, as I say, as you can see here, I'm going to be talking about how we can use behavioral science for pro-social outcomes to make a better society, to help people make better choices for everyone. I work for, as has been introduced, the Behavioural Insights team. So we're a social purpose company, we're a consultancy. We were originally part of the UK government. So the UK government's tax trial was actually run by BIT, as have many subsequent, both in the UK and overseas. We were formed because the government at the time wanted to find, and here's the quote, intelligent ways to encourage, support, and enable people to make better choices for themselves. So, and the way that BIT and the government at the time decided to do this is by using behavioural insights, or what we call BI, which are kind of learnings from the behavioural sciences, the wider academic behavioural science literature that we can apply practically to help people make better choices. So let's give that a proper definition. So BI, behavioural insights, are empirical findings about human behaviour that can help people make better choices. I feel pretty confident in giving that definition because the BIT are the ones who came up with it. I will break it down slightly more just to say that we talk about empirical findings. So those that have been tested and shown to be effective. So behavioural insights is all about going into behavioural science literature, which is economics, behavioural economics, social psychology, cognitive psychology, neuroscience, and looking for elements about the way that humans think, about the way that we make decisions, and then harvesting those in order to influence, as we see here, human behaviour. And we will always talk about behaviour rather than attitudes or beliefs. There is a relationship between our attitudes, our values, and what we actually do. But actually the science tends to show us that it's not quite as solid a connection as we might sometimes think. So we're interested in what people actually do and how we influence real choices, not just what people say they might do sometimes. And finally, of course, behavioural has always been about helping people make better choices. How do we help people make choices that help both themselves and the community at large? So very baked into this idea of behavioural insights is literally how do we go into the kind of the academic sphere of psychology and economics and find mechanisms and ideas that can help make a better society. So I think it's absolutely well placed for social enterprises and NGOs to be picking up on this, and many already are. I'm going to give an example here of a particular project, which was a classic behavioural insights project, to try and get people to make a good choice for themselves and indeed for everyone. This was in the UK a couple of years ago, and the project, the objective was, how do we get more people to sign up to be on the organ donor register? Now, here in Singapore, it's as a default, you are on the organ donor register once you turn 18. You have to opt out. And actually, we see all over the world consistently the countries that have an opt-out system, I have to actively say I don't want to be on the organ donor register. They tend to have much higher rates of registration to be organ donors. The UK is in a country where you have to opt in. You're automatically not on the register unless you tell us, the government, that you want to be on the register. This is an example of different defaults, which is piece of choice architecture. Anyway, so changing that means changing a lot of big policy. So what we wanted to do is a project a little bit smaller scale and say, okay, that being said, without shifting it to this different system, how can we encourage more people to sign up to be on the register? And so what we did is we worked with this particular process that happens annually in the UK for drivers, which is renewing your tax disc. This is your vehicle tax, which you have to renew once a year. Great to get organ donors from this, get people registered on organ donors if they're drivers, because actually car crashes do often lead to suitable organs for harvesting. So the way it worked is that people go on this online system, they'd complete and they'd renew their vehicle tax disc, this existing process. They'd get to the end of that process and they'd see originally this screen, thank you, please join the NHS organ donor register. And then there's a little join button there. And so what we did was use the behavioral insights to come up with some alternatives, some alternative messages. So one was to have the original message, but also to say, every day, thousands of people who see this page decide to register. So the idea is that this is kind of speaks to the fact that we're very social creatures. One of the things that can influence our behavior is what's everyone else doing. There's obviously a kind of an evolutionary argument for this. If lots of other people are doing it, that means it's probably a safe, secure, sensible choice. It's also the reason that in a hawker stall here, or maybe when you're looking through different food options in Hong Kong, when you're walking down the restaurants and looking at the Dai Pai Dong, you might say, well, which one has the longest queue? Because if it's got a long queue, that means the food must be really good. It's definitely the system we use here. So that was one of the things we tried. Another was that same message, but we added this image of a group of people to sort of try and catch visual attention. And yet another version we tried was, again, same message, every day thousands of people who see this page decide to register, but we gave the NHS logo. So the idea here is there's something around messengers. Often the way that we interpret information changes depending on who the messenger is. The way that I respond to the government asking me for money might be different than the way I respond to an NGO, even if they were asking for it for the same purpose. Another thing we tried, 3 people die every day because there are not enough organ donors. Trying to clarify what the risks of inaction were. That can sometimes be quite helpful and help with sort of focusing people's attention. And framing it as a loss. People will die if you don't act. Alternatively, you could save or transform up to 9 lives as an organ donor. So here we have the benefits, clarifying those to the reader, to the participant, and framing it as a gain. There's 9 lives we gain, because the way that we respond to losses and gains can be quite different. Another one, if you needed an organ transplant, would you have one? If so, please help others. The idea behind this is that we like to be consistent. And if you're someone who would take an organ, if an organ was on offer, if I present that fact to you, you say, well, actually, it's a bit inconsistent of me to be okay taking an organ, but not okay being on the register to give organs, which can, again, it can motivate you to change your behavior. If the behavior change is small, this doesn't always work. If the behavior change is small, it can motivate you, can change your behavior to better align with your demonstrated position. And then similarly, but not quite as kind of aggressively, if you support organ donation, please turn your support into action. So 8 different ideas, and this was run on real people who were renewing their taxes. This wasn't a laboratory experiment. This was people who were going through this online government process, and all we were doing was just randomizing them to go and receive these different messages. And then we were seeing how many of them signed up for the register. Now, so here are the 8 variants. So the original, which is no additional message, just please join. The everyday thousands of people, that same message with a picture of some people, with a picture of a heart, which is the NHS logo for organ donation. 3 people die every day versus you could save up to 9 lives. If you need an organ transplant, would you have one? And then finally, If you support organization, please turn your support into action. So 8 different variants that we tried. Now, if I'm going to ask Miller to help me with this next bit, because what I'm going to ask all of you to do is vote on which of these you think was the most effective.
This is a very interesting little exercise about behavioral experiment. So everybody, if you're online, if you have seen this screen, please fill in your answer and we will instantly see the results, which messages work the best. We're not talking about individuals, but we are interested in the whole, the whole group. Like all of you who are online, we're interested in the aggregate of all of you in a number, in a single number, which will be calculated automatically by this online calculator that Alex shared. Please do and fill in. So I myself and the other panelists cannot vote. So these are purely for the members of the audience. Which message you think worked best that convince you to donate organs?
I'm relying on you, Miller, to tell me when to move on. So just give me the signal.
Yes, I think the technical team has just concluded that. Let's see the numbers.
Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of votes for you could save or transform up to 9 lives as an organ donor. It's a very positive message, isn't it? It is quite it's quite appealing to see. But we know that sometimes what we think might be the most effective message isn't actually the most effective message. As I say, attitudes and beliefs don't always equal behavior, which is why we ran this as a real experiment on real people, and we saw what actually was most effective. So the control group, the people who received no additional messages, they were just asked straight up, would you like to sign up? About 2.3% of everyone ended up signing up. When you said thousands of people who see this page decide to register, it increased. No change for if you add NHS logo, exactly the same amount of people as if you just have the text by itself. 9 Lives performs similarly. 2.9% of people, so about as well as everyday thousands of people. 3 Die does better. This in general shouldn't surprise us. Often people are more attentive and respond more strongly to the potential losses than they do potential gains. It's almost more attention grabbing, it's more motivating to avoid a loss, which in this case is 3 Die. Would you so if you need an organ transplant, would you have one? Was even more effective. Again, this thing about trying to remain consistent. Take action, less effective than would you. A similar idea, but not quite as good. And actually, adding the picture of the people made it worse than if you hadn't said anything at all. We think that's probably because if you look at that picture of people, it looks very stock image. It sort of makes it look a little bit low budget. And that seems to have put people off. So, but obviously we didn't know that when we tested it, right? Which is why we tried it.
May I have a quick point of clarification, Alex? Do you show each of the 8 messages to every single respondent, or
no?
One person will be one type of this message.
Precisely right. So we had thousands of people going through this experiment. Each person was randomized to receive one of these 8 messages. Not all 8 as well. So that's a good example of how we can use behavioral insights to design more effective interventions, more effective messages, more effective policies, programs. And also, BI often includes running experimental evaluations to see whether those work and evaluate their effectiveness. Organizations, for example, there's lots of other things that BI can do. Encourage bankers to donate their salary to charity in exchange for 50 cents worth of candy. Motivated disadvantaged kids to apply for the top universities in the country. Ensured people are hired because they are right for the job, not because of the way they look or where they went to school. Helped people realize that they should be consuming less energy, less food. Encouraged kids from different backgrounds to foster connections with one another in a group setting. And there's many more that I'm not going to mention here, because BI isn't just a list of solutions. It's a methodology for solving social issues through better understanding of how human beings think and behave. I think we're going to draw to a close there. Thank you very much.
That's a great sharing about behavioral science experiments. Thank you so much, Alex. So without further ado, let's go to the next speaker, Professor Sharon Rundle-Thiel, to begin her sharing. And I'm sure we have time for Q&A at the end if you have more questions to Alex and the other speakers. So let's, without further ado, let's have Professor Sharon.
So likewise, if someone can give me a nod just to let me know they can hear me and see slides, that would be very useful. Thanks, Alex, I appreciate it. So I'm a marketer by training. I was working with big commercials, and as Yanto pointed out, pricing, just one tactic that we used to use to nudge people to change their behavior. But there's so much more that we can do. So many years ago, I settled into university life and decided I would turn my talent from all things commercial to how can I actually apply marketing for social change. And today I lead a team of more than 40 people based out at Griffith University here in Brisbane, Australia. And today I'm going to share a little bit about our process very briefly, just to explain what this actually means. Marketing is a strategy. It's philosophical and it places people at the heart of everything that it actually does. Now, most people think marketing is Facebook or social media or a TV ad. But marketing's not. It's actually a process. It's about continually improving and helping to give people what they want, when they want it, at the time and the place that really works for them. So we use a 3-step process. It's called CBE. And that paper there gives you an example and an experiment that we actually ran to retain women in science and other technological studies, because there are less women in those fields than men. So it's just one way of starting to give you more detail than perhaps even I can speak to in just this short time. We start off by co-creating the solutions that people want to see. So our programs are designed by the people at the heart of the problem, and we work together with them to actually build the program that they wanted to actually see come to life. We create partnerships, work with stakeholders, and make sure that we do this in a way that we can get more out there, more people hearing about us more often, more times. Because what marketing is known for and what it's very good at doing is developing content that people want to actually see. Alex said before that sometimes the pictures used, the people, can actually deter. So if we want to attract attention, what are we doing, where and how? Do people know about us? If they know about us, why aren't they coming back? This is a really critical part of building things that last, that people actually want. So today I'm going to share an example with you. I thought because we were a social entrepreneurship summit, that bringing to you a program that we actually tested, can it actually be built and work and people will pay for it, would be a great way to start. So in our co-creation process, this is a deep learning phase. If we haven't worked in an area before, we need to understand how people have worked in the past to get some outcomes that actually benefit either people or our planet. So we run evidence reviews. Let's have a look at other programs. What are their characteristics? What worked? What didn't? I'm a marketer. I am not an expert in any other field. So we have to work with the people who are in that industry to understand what they know. Where have they been? What have they seen that works? It's really important. And then we've heard today that what people think doesn't actually necessarily influence what they go on to do. And it's such a good point. Surveys are important. They give us language. People give us some of their reported behaviours of what they actually do. And importantly, other characteristics that we can use to make sure we put messages, programs and things in the right place at the right time. But that's all just looking backwards. That's what we already know. And when we're actually here to drive behaviour change, we actually need to do things differently. What's new, what's innovative, and what haven't we done before? This is so critical for shaping change. So we go into a process called co-design. And here I have another science paper that we've published that gives you the really clear, long explanation for what we do. Co-design works with users. We get them into the room and we ask them what a solution looks like for them. And these are examples of solutions that teams have drawn. Now, these are dog owners whose dogs were actually attacking koalas. And in Australia, our koalas need all the help that they can get. In January, the bushfires halved their populations, but we've been working to actually protect them for more than 4.5 years now. So these are the ideas that people bring to us. They give us very clear insight and true understanding of what it is that we need to do. And armed with this as our job, we need fun programs focused on dogs, broadly on wildlife too, that show us what to do. We take that understanding forward and apply marketing. Those of you that may know something about marketing might have heard about the 4 Ps. Here's a training session program built based on what the experts told us to do, sold at a price. We actually charge dog owners $150 to come and actually receive our training. And in that training, we put in one protective behaviour. Dogs can be trained to avoid wildlife. We know how to do it. We can teach dog owners how they can help getting their dogs to do it too. And like any good marketer, we make really sure that what we build is in a place at a time and a space that people want. So different days, different locations. And then we tell them all about it. We open for business to sell our program and bring them into the room. Now, people had told us they wanted something that was fun. So we created a festival. And here in Australia, people love their dogs. 1 in 2 families owns a dog. And you can see here people coming together to celebrate man's best friend. So we had fun things. There was dog beer, dog ice cream. Did you know that there's even puppuccinos, like coffee for dogs? All sorts of fun ideas. But at our event, there was a very serious side too. We needed to actually show people and dog owners what other dogs can actually do. And here you can see pictured some of the talks and the displays going on. On top of that, we had the dog training companies there, all ready to actually sell programs to dog owners in the community. Now, we did this with no advertising spend. We got community to talk for us. We got out there, we learned what they wanted, we built the retail partnerships, and here you can see all of the community out there on social media celebrating the event and having a great time. This event was our way of making sure people knew our program was out there and that it could work to protect koalas. The paper here actually reports the outcomes from the study. We had people enroll in the program, people completing the program, and dogs who were trained to avoid koalas. So we'd proven that we could build a social enterprise and we could actually train people and achieve the behaviours and the outcomes that people wanted to see. We did this, and then the council itself said we want this right across our community. So this led to another 2 rounds of work, taking that pilot, that small concept and idea, and rolling it out citywide. Could we now get out there? And here's where you can see our process start to repeat. We already knew what worked, we knew what didn't work and what needed to be improved. And so with version 2 and stages 2 and 3, we continually improved to extend our reach and to make sure we actually brought in more dog trainers over time who could teach dog owners how to do this behaviour. So marketing itself with a strategic process can then serially roll on. Here you can see featured one of our expert trainers. He was brought into the community to teach the dog trainers who service that local area how to do this training. He also interacted broadly with community. So we ran direct to public, but also specialised training programs, because our job was to embed this skill across the community. Could we make sure that more people could teach it and just put it into their normal business as usual? In doing so, we could demonstrate right across the space, people want help. These are dog owners seeking all sorts of advice on their dogs to understand what else it was that they could do and improving their behaviours over time. Now, again, we'd looked in the first instance, we'd actually evaluated the program, we understood which channels worked really well for us, and you saw before that social media did a lot of talking for us. This time we had a little bit of advertising budget, and this time we started to use things like bus shelters and radio to just get a little bit more awareness out there too. So a very consistent, coordinated program, and you can see where dog owners asked right at the start, please keep this program dog focused. The dog is always the focus of our program, not the koala, not the planet that we were trying to protect, but the people themselves and the things that they actually cared about. This time round, we created more resources and had them out online, talking to dog owners about things that they cared about, making sure that we were supporting them through all sorts of different things that led to the ultimate behaviour that we wanted as well. We received press coverage and wide community support, making sure that the message got out there. So talking to people, building the messages they actually want to see and they engage with is a really critical part to do. And you can see us just highlighting where we've got good engagement from community to understand what's working well for us and what's not. So monitoring and evaluation are a huge part of what we do. This is a field trial. So this is an example of working in one whole city area and measuring ourselves using a control community. So making sure that we can point back to the differences that our program has made, because we know there are other programs out there too. So it's really important to be able to talk to people about what the true outcomes of the work we do are. So our journey continues. And at the moment, we've got newsletters, website development, and other work that's gone on to ensure that that program can continue. There are more than 70% of dog trainers who service that area now who can train for this behaviour. That means every dog they're training is actually picking up this skill. And ultimately, it's just spreading through community, possibly as fast as the COVID-19 virus, which is a little sad to say. But we are behaviour change as a focus. It is the true DNA of why we exist. Is our program making the difference that we want to see? Now, self-report data from surveys tells us that there's a 15% increase in the amount of dogs that can now do wildlife aversion. For a marketer, this is a bit of a dream. It's a big statistic over just a short space of time. But we're seeing increases in other behaviours too. 40% increases for dogs coming back when they're called, because that's a bit of a control thing. Dogs get excited. They get so excited they no longer listen. So can we help with training and have more obedient dogs coming through? But our ultimate measure of success was protecting the Australian koala. This beautiful creature doesn't exist anywhere else on the planet unless we've taken it on a plane. Our results demonstrate before and after implementation of Leave It that we now have less deaths of koalas. You see, hospitals actually take notes of how the koala has been injured as it comes in. Our dogs harm koalas, but so do cars and our driving. So we're just working from the dog attack data, and that shows us a 40% decrease in deaths. So we're pretty proud of that, but we would love to see no deaths at all. We're truly ultimately driving for that ultimate outcome, and that's hard to get. So this work for our team continues. We're now working not only with dogs, but cats, because cats kill wildlife too. So last month, we established Furry Friends. And if you are on Facebook and able to follow us, you can start to watch this next stage of our journey unfold, because you will see continued work protecting not only koalas, but other forms of wildlife too, and with more than just dogs, as we move into other pets that we own that are actually causing a lot of damage and reducing biodiversity. The other thing we've brought in is our virtual character, Kylie. She's animated. She's not real. She is an AI form. And Kylie is actually joining a citizen science program where people are actually monitoring koalas out at the Redland City area. Kylie too only launched just a few weeks ago, and she's doing exceptionally well as she starts to go through. So similar to behavioural innovations and behavioural insights, we can actually help. We come out into community, work with them, and try wherever we can to come up with sustainable solutions. Whose strengths can we work with? What else can we do? Because our ultimate ideal as a team is to be able to helicopter back out of any scenario that we go into. Can we help strengthen communities to protect not only planet, but also people? Thank you so much for inviting me today, Yanto, and I really wish that I could have been in Hong Kong, but thank you from Brisbane.
That's an amazing sharing. We learned a lot about social marketing. So I can see the angle or the style is slightly different from the first one from Alex. But there are many ways. There are different types of experiments running everywhere. Different types, different style, different tastes. So without further ado, let's welcome the last speaker, Mr. Ko Sang-chun, who is now a little celebrity because he's based in Hong Kong. They opened a shop in Hong Kong, Dignity Kitchen and Project Dignity. Please go ahead, Mr. Ko. Mr. Ko, can you turn on your microphone? We can't hear you. We can't hear you, Mr. Ko. We can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you so much.
Okay, mine is about behavior change and how we change working with people with disability. Okay, I'm the founder of Project Dignity, which is a food court, a social enterprise. Okay, let's get straight to the point. I want to show you in terms of how we change individuals. So we work with people who are physically disabled, mentally disabled, socially disabled, and intellectually disabled. Varies from 17 years old to 87 years old from various backgrounds. So I want to start with our case study. My girl here, actually quite 10 years ago, on a wedding day, the husband didn't turn up. So imagine you have hundreds of guests and there's no husband. So she went to depression. From depression, she became suicidal. She tried to kill herself many times. They came to see us 4 years ago, and she asked us to help her. Her parents asked us to help her. So when I went to her house to interview her, her house is filled with all these wedding gifts. So for years and years, she kept the memory around. So she's suicidal. So I said, why don't you give us a try? We'll train you and then get you a job. Project Dignity is about train and place people with disability. So we got her in on the first day when she came, 9 o'clock, she went straight to the medical box and looked for aspirin. So I told her, can you give us a chance? Don't die now. Don't kill yourself today. At 12 o'clock, she took half the bottle and we called the ambulance. That didn't work. She doesn't want to go because once she gets arrested, she gets straight into the mental hospital. At 4 o'clock, she wanted to do it again. This time I told her, if you rather do, you go ahead and do it, but do it outside Project Dignity Kitchen. She didn't do it. So many years later, I asked her, why did you kill yourself that day? Interesting, what she said was, Mr. Ko, in your food court, there are 40 to 50 people there. They're either physically disabled, deaf person selling coffee, hearing stroke, making pastry, you know, all these disabled people. And when you look around them, don't you think I'm very blessed? She went on to be a SOS counselor. Case number 2. This is quite interesting. One of the things we handle are people who are in hospice. Now, in Singapore, if you are 3 months and less and you're going to die, we can put into hospice. If you don't die within 3 months, you must die within 1 year, right? Sorry, I'm covering a very morbid subject, but just bear with me for a while. If in 1 year, you either daycare or home care. That means daycare, you come to see doctor every day, and home care, you die at home. So Project Dignity Kitchen decided, why don't we bring you in? And what we did, we bring this uncle in, his name is Uncle Fu. We brought him in and we let him work, making coffee. He's the best worker I ever had. You're supposed to come at 8 o'clock to start work, 6 o'clock, he come early on the line, get everything ready, and he's always the last person to leave. You see, when you're at that stage in life, time is so different, you know. And at the end of the day, right, he's supposed to die in 1 year. He survived 6 years. Looking back, I think it's because he has something to do, something to interact, people to talk about. Then that actually extend her life. Actually, he has a tumor case, right? And I'm very blessed to be working with him actually. We work with very special people, cerebral palsy. So you're surrounded by very good people who are not trained. They're neither, they are psychologists, sociologists, they're not. All they have is patience and passion. Now, this boy suffered from cerebral palsy. All we wanted him to do was to point and order your tea or coffee.
You must point.
Can you listen?
Point closer.
All you wanted to do is to point. You point for seconds. It takes 5 minutes to point.
Okay, good.
He went on to work in a small shop, right? So you see the people you have, it must be people helping you. This is about social innovation. This boy suffered from cerebral palsy. So imagine he cannot cook, but look at it, that machine actually helped him. Once you press a button, if you do a method study on how noodles is made in Singapore, you realize they need to blanch. That machine blanch for you. It just blanch and then you pour it out, right? Look at that. Look at the end of the hook. There's a hook there, right? And he runs the noodle shop. This is my favorite. Now, mother who give birth to a child with disability is very tough. People don't understand the challenges of a mother. So imagine your husband, your in-laws, why do you give birth to a child with disability? The mother, the caregiver goes through a lot psychologically. So I decided to put the mother and child together to sell second-hand books. So you see the mother and child together. So all these kids are either Down syndrome, cerebral palsy. The young man there suffer from Russell-Silver syndrome, right? So they actually run a great environment where they run a second-hand bookshop. Look, so he'll go down, have activity to do, right? And the mother is there to take care of them. But why books? Books is free. Everybody got a storybook at home that you throw away. I'll get them and I'll sell them, right? Down syndrome, they are the best salesmen you can find, honestly. They are very friendly, right? So basically, why hospital? Very safe. Cameras are everywhere. And if you guys go to hospital, you realize people are very friendly. Nurses are very friendly. And we create very special machine to do. So as of today, there are 4 hospital shops. The first one at Kutik Kwan Hospital, the second one at NUH, third one at Ng Tien Fong, and the third one at Sengkang, all located in hospital, right? So what we do is that in order to change a behavior, first you must scale them. And to scale them, we develop curriculum. We are not so much as you're changing people's mindset to doing things. Then after that, get them a job. You see, once a person has a work and has a job, it's so much easier. They have a life. They can support their family. So that is very important to have a job. Thirdly, integrate back to society. And to do that, I create a food court, a food court environment. Real-time learning, come on, right? And finally, inclusion, getting society to accept them. And for that, what we do, we create events. One of the events that we create is that we go to nursing home, elderly home. We bring the elderly out every day, bring them around city tour and come for lunch. So imagine you have people with certain disabilities serving an elderly, right? And I tell you, elderly are very nice people to serve too. The disabled people cook, the elderly eat. That's the environment that we create. So Dignity Kitchen is a hawker center, a food court. We create jobs. We handle all kinds of disability, physical, polio, cerebral, single parents, dyslexia. The trick here is to mix them all together. So you create a behavior change by mixing people with single mother, with bipolar, schizophrenic, intelligent, all together. And I tell you, when they work with each other, they really know how to work with each other. So we cover different disability. People are stroke, mental, social, intellectual. We cover different race. We handle from 17. So the spectrum of people with beneficiary work are very wide. Right? So the first thing we did was to create an environment called Dignity Kitchen. It's a food court with 7 stores, fully operational. Then we train the people with different disability to work. And don't forget, food is for the masses. And you study Maslow hierarchy on it, food is a subsistence. You need to eat. and they only train them in real time. They're looking at the only hawker training program in ASEAN. That means it covers, you know, you got Singapore, there are a lot of famous culinary school everywhere, but there's no hawker training school in the world. Then integrate back to society. By the way, this is very true. When they work with the public, it's very important they achieve real time. Then this is where we are, hospital, pre-love, and they are all very well taken care of, right? So what I'm trying to say, in order to make behavior change, you must create the tools to help them, right? So I show you, we have a lot of tools, by the way. How do you train the deaf people to sell coffee with milk, so sign language. We create tools of how to train the blind. So once they have the tool, like how to teach a blind to be a cashier, right? So we develop a lot of tools to help these people. And innovation. If you look at what we have done now, we have machines, we have created a lot of things. We need to innovate, right? Mostly the environment. To make the behavior change, you need to create the environment. And no better environment than actually a hawker center or food center. And finally, to make any behavior change, you need people, right? I'm very honored that there are a couple learned friends before me. These are the people that can make the change, right? Dignity Kitchen now has been around for what, 11 years now. In Singapore, we have 72 people working for me now, of which 49 of them are people with disability. As of today, we train 1,400 disabled people into employment, 100% employment. Every day when we fetch the elderly, right, okay, and I tell you, elderly coming out is very different. The behavior changes of this elderly to make themselves useful, you'll be surprised. And we done 130,000. 2 years ago, I started the same thing in Hong Kong, where I'm now sitting in Hong Kong now. On Hong Kong now, we have 58 people working here. 43 of them are people with disability, right? And if you have a chance to come in Hong Kong, you can see how Dignity Kitchen, everything is manned by these special people. So coming back to the question on social good and social enterprise, we are actually changing behavior of people with disability. The idea is very simple. The mission of the Project Dignity is to return dignity to the disabled and disadvantaged to vocation with passion. Thank you. I did it in 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Koh. That's a very interesting sharing. So a quick kind of like recap before we open the questions to the audience is I think we can see different types or different style of doing the experiments, where in the presentation by Alex, by BIT, they're directly trying to change the public behavior. And it's very obvious what they're trying to do. In the Sharon's presentation, apart from, it's kind of a two-pronged change that they're trying to do. They're trying to change the dog owners' behavior and the dogs' behavior themselves. So trying to change two things together. So I think that's a bit different. And then plus there's a campaign. There's an information campaign that goes after those experiments. So it's a kind of a slight nuance, kind of a difference compared to the ones done by Alex and the team. And then by Mr. Koh, what's unique about what they have done here is they use a lot of tools like designing equipments, devices to help these disabled to actually do their work. And actually they are trying to change the behavior of the disabled themselves, but they also try to change the behavior of the public. And I think what Mr. Koh didn't mention here, which I think worth mentioning, is I remember when I spoke to Mr. Koh 4 years ago, when I interviewed him in Singapore, he told me about how Dignity Kitchen, when it started, they asked all of the disabled people to wear badges, deaf, blind, whatever, and there's no sales for the whole month. But then when he asked, what's going on here? Take off all of these badges. So there's no stigmatization, sales pickup. So I think that's also a very interesting insights related to the market interactions, how the consumers view their food court and view the disabled who are working in the food court in Dignity Kitchen to serve the public. So I think that's very interesting. So I won't talk further. I'll very much open this this floor to the audience. Other questions? Can the audience ask questions directly by voice or no? Oh, audience need to type audience, if you have any questions, you need to type in the Q&A. There was one question earlier by Mr. Luke Cam Ho, and I've answered that in writing. If you have any questions, please type your questions here. Type questions.
You want me to, you want me to tell them the story of the badges?
Yeah, why don't you tell the story of the badges while waiting for the more questions, Mr. Cole?
Okay, when I first started, I make a lot of mistakes, right? And one of the mistakes was my people, disabled people, are very slow. I have a blind boy who's a cashier and things are very slow. So I went down to buy badges to tell people we are slow. One badges was the word blind and deaf, and one particular one was the word mental. Do you know, for the next 6 days, there was practically no sales. Everybody come in, they saw the word mental, they walk away. Saw the mental, walk away, right? So for the 6 days, it was a very, very tough lesson for me, right? Because if nobody buy, my people will be very demoralized. And one particular guy will say, you must be crazy to get crazy mental patient to sell food. Aren't you worried mental patient put things inside the food and sell it out? So he laughed, he find it very funny, right? And I told the guy, for what? A dessert is $2.50. You want to buy. Why do you need to comment? So that 6 days taught me a lesson about behavior science. But after the 6 days, my guys were saying, boss, take it out. So we took it out. On the 7 days, sales pick up. But what was sad about the 6 days was every night I have to throw away food. I remember one particular night, I flushed down toilet 2 kilograms of nasi lemak, coconut rice. I flushed down chicken wings and I flushed down in the toilet. Can you imagine? And vegetable in the toilet. If you ever throw away rice in your life, it will be very, very bright imprint on you. Rice. And from that day onward, I realized Dingley Kitchen is not an easy thing to do. No, seriously, we have a lot of mistakes. Right. Sorry. Yeah, go on.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's see if there are other questions. Still, there's no further questions. Okay. Let me ask, is there a social entrepreneur or social innovator in this room, in this online room now? Is there anybody is a social entrepreneur or running a social enterprise or working for social enterprise, running a social innovation projects? I wanted to know what your problems are if you're one of them. Tell us what your problems are and see we can quickly give a quick kind of thought about, you know, how you could be given some sort of directions using behavioral science to tackle your questions, tackle your difficulties. Like Mr. Ko, he's a real practitioner. He's done this real experiments in life. And I remember he was an engineer by training. So by nature, without realizing it, he's done lots of experiments in his life. So, and of course, Alex and Sharon, they do that in their work a lot. So
can I say something?
Go ahead.
You see, one of the slides I didn't want to put on was the word money. You see, to make behavior change, you need money, right? And let me explain to you why is it that successfully that Project Dignity has done it. Every student we took in, we pay them $4.50 an hour. 1 day, $27. To make the behavior change, money is the best motivator. There's one particular side of Down syndrome kids. So money can change anything. So what we do is that if you don't do what we tell you to do, like what the characteristic that Yanto was talking about, we don't pay you $4.50 an hour, right? So every day, $27. One kid we train is 6,000 to 8,000, or 4,000 to 6,000 Sing dollars. Likewise in Hong Kong, every person we take, we pay them $37.50 an hour for the first 2 weeks. After that, we pay them 8,000 to 10,000 a month. So money is a very good motivator. So for behavioral change, I can't tell you guys how fantastic money is, because we don't give you stars, we don't waste, we give you cash, right? And that, sorry guys, money is how we put the thing. That's the secret. Honestly, that's the secret.
I think behavioral economists will be very happy to hear from you, because they believe, you know, we can use financial incentive to create behavioral change. And the same, you know, the duo who won the Nobel Prize in economics last year, working on poverty, on development economics, dealing with poverty, they try to use money to incentivize mothers to take the children to go for immunization. or to take the kids to attend schools, giving them a small pack of lentils, some kind of a grains that they eat in South Asia, and that really incentivize parents to actually do the things for the goodness of their children and their families, etc. So,
Yeah, but you must understand, for intellectually challenged like Down syndrome and autism, they don't know what money is, but they know that a piece of paper can buy toys. That's all. So we always give them the yellow piece of paper, the green piece, that's all. And they know what the paper can do. Maybe next time I share a video on how we train a Down syndrome guy to actually run the store using money alone. And the experiment was very well done.
Great. Do we have questions from the audience? Q&A, I don't, let me see. Yes. Oops, somebody in Chinese, I don't understand. While money, a question from Luke Kamho, while money is a powerful incentive, it can also prompt other undesirable action. How shall we control for the power of money? Very interesting questions. And there's another question, how the social enterprises who had strike so hard for her own business set their effort in the impact on society. I'm not too sure what this means. Some of the questions are in Chinese. Thank you so much. So I'm sorry, my Chinese is is not up to a certain level to directly interpret your messages. So there's a question about money. I mean, actually, to me, this question is not very clear. Are you talking about the ethical dilemma of using money, or are you talking about whether money is the only way to change behavior? Definitely no, it's not the only way to change behavior. There are many other ways. But if you ask about what could be the ethical dimensions of using money to incentivize, that is a big question. That's a philosophical and ethical questions, I guess. If Alex or Sharon wants to jump in some of the ethical issues with using money, perhaps. Do you use money to incentivize?
I mean, so I can certainly speak from experience working on government policy that one of the challenges for using financial incentives is, for governments at least, once you've started, it's very hard to stop. Often financial incentives are, again, for governments more than anyone else, a sort of the immediate kind of thought, because, and don't get me wrong, they can be extremely effective in motivating behavior. Often the way we use financial incentives, we need to be quite clever with it if we are going to use them. There are ways to introduce financial incentives in a way that can engage habit formation, long-term habit formation, in which case you get more value for that money, if you see what I mean. At the same time, I think that it felt to me like the questioner was also sort of trying to say, well, do we also run the risk that this does get away from us when we start using money when we start financially incentivizing? I think there is a classic question that we get asked a lot when we're doing more pro-social stuff about whether financial incentives are in some way worse. Like, oh, if people are only doing this for the money, like, what's the good in that? I want them to do it because they have some intrinsic motivation. They understand the importance of this. All I would say on that is that, again, we shouldn't use financial incentives lightly, and we should have kind of a fair thought to intrinsic or non-financial incentives that we can use, partly because they can be more affordable, particularly for NGOs. You have more at your disposal than you might think. Goodwill goes a long way. But if we are using money, there are ways to use it sort of cleverly, so you build that intrinsic motivation. It's wrong to think that the reason that we do stuff is because we have a set of values and a set of thoughts, and then we choose to behave that way. Often we behave in a certain way because of things that we aren't that aware of, our subconscious mechanisms in our thought process, and then our attitudes shift to respond to that.
So in short, there's a pros and cons of using financial incentives. It works in some contexts. It doesn't quite work. For example, it works for Dignity Kitchen because this is part of what they do. They need to pay people, right? But they use the salary payment as a way of engaging the disabled people, while the in the behavioral insights team by Alex, they're actually trying to know what kind of policies can work. So perhaps it's more challenging to give out a lot of money to the public. So there's a question of cost effectiveness issue. There are other questions as well. Let me read it out. This is by Nick, from Nick. Give us some examples or guidance on the change of thinking habits, how to improve young people's self-knowledge into a habit. I think this is a questions about how to change mindset in order to change behavior. Quickly from my take, I've been doing research on social enterprises for the past 10 or 12 years in Hong Kong alone. I've seen some social enterprises, their approach is to say that change happens bit by bit. So they say baby steps to making change. So when they are designing their programs or intervention to change the public behavior, they believe that you should not change the behavior overnight, because that's very difficult to do, but change it little by little, a bit by bit. And I can name you, for example, like Green Monday is a local social enterprise that encourages people to buy a secondhand clothing. So if you go to the shop in Wan Chai and other places, they've got all of these messages as a nudge to kind of stimulate you. For example, they say, try before you buy, because they don't want people to buy these secondhand clothes and you don't like it and throw it away, and that creates another waste. So they say, try before you buy, and step by step, as you change your behavior to be more environmentally friendly. And there's another one called Green Monday. They're trying to sell these plant-based meat. So it's a kind of a pork or beef, but it's made of plant vegetables. Right? So that's the raw ingredient. So they're also trying to change the behavior of the public so that they will consume more of this. And they give a lot of reasoning behind this, that to grow one cow is equivalent to driving how many trucks for how many kilometers in terms of emission. So they use that sort of analogy and give you that information so that hopefully consumers will be willing to try to eat this plant-based meat, things like that. Hopefully we answer your questions.
Can I just add to what? First of all, maybe I explain to Alex that money is just one of the things that we do. The best incentive is not money. The best incentive is food. You see, we are cooking class. So coming to the question of how we incentivize and slowly incremental change, right? We use food from every day you're cooking, and every day you maximize your senses from the taste to the eyes. So we got Western food, we got Chinese food. And I tell you, food is a fantastic way of educating and changing mindset. And when a young boy make a popiah or the things that we do, I tell you, and they actually taste it. That day, the next day, they would bring it to their mother, and mom, this is what I did, you know. So the family plays a part in encouraging, because food is a fantastic media, seriously. And that's how we change. Money is only a secondary measure that there's incentive to do this. But every course that we do, our training is all related to food. Right. So, for example, when they come for the basic hygiene, when they wash their hand, we teach them how to make pancake. You know, after that, they must wash the tray. So the whole program is set by, actually, I'm the developer of the whole program, the 2-year program, which is approved by Scale Future. So basically, the government of Singapore approved that program because it's a unique way of using food to, first of all, educate you. Secondly, incentivize you. And thirdly, give you back your respect and dignity. Because when you bring a popiah hole or pancake hole, the best is the lava cake. The kids love to do lava cake. I don't know why, because once they cut in and all the things come out, they love it. And they will bring back to their mom the lava cake. And the mom will say, well done, right? So in a way, they bring the respect from the family towards him or her. So the actual device, the whole entire program is based on food. And then when they pack the food to give to the poor people in Hong Kong, those kids are actually delivering the food to the poor. And they are so active, they are practically running the whole show now, right? So food is the media in which how we make the change. Money is just the incentive to make sure you come to work, to make sure you stay at work. A lot of people who work with disabled people, they don't stay long, right? And by the way, when we place you with job, we make sure you're paid higher than my salary I give you. So that's the incentive. For example, I pay you $8,000 in Hong Kong now. The next job, by the way, washing dishes in Hong Kong, the salary is 14,000 to 12,000 to 14,000 per month. That's better paid than Singapore workers, I'm telling you, right? Because they actually doing something. And also one more thing, you don't call them dishwasher, you call them machine operator, because that machine is an operation. So the whole thing, you match it such a way that they give them their self-respect and dignity. So I'm just explaining you, the real medium is food. Come on, Prof. If somebody give you a nice lava cake, you sure love her very much, correct?
Oh, we will love it. We will love the cake.
Yeah.
What I can say again about Project Dignity is an experiment with dignity. I think you are trying to show here that if you show dignity to these people, give them this dignity, it will really change their behavior.
Yeah.
It will change the public behavior. So I think this is the gist of a lot of your sharing today. So I think we are really went beyond our time, like nearly 15 to 20 minutes past the 5:30 sort of line. So I think we have to close this. So here's I'm sorry that I will not be able to answer all the questions, but of course, if you have any further questions, feel free to email us and contact us. You can find us. You can Google our names. You can find easily our contact details. And some of us, we have put our emails here in the chat line. So this is the end of the session. And thank you so much for Alex, for Mr. Koh, and Sharon, for sharing a lot of your insights and expertise and experience in behavioral experiments to change public behavior for the good reasons. And thank you for all of you who have joined us this past 1 hour or so. And please take a few minutes to fill in the survey in the chat room. So go to the chat room or scan the QR code here, scan the QR code, and please give us the feedback. So, it's helpful for us in the coming years because we keep on doing more and more of this summit. And last but not least, please return to the agenda page if you'd like to join the other sessions. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good evening and have a pleasant week, productive week, and hopefully to see you again. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.